A quiet librarian with a dangerous secret crosses paths with a CEO whose obsession might expose them both. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Lily Thompson had always led a quiet, unassuming life. Working as a librarian in a small, sleepy town, she was the picture of calm. Her days were filled with the smell of old books, the rustle of pages, and the hum of silence that only a library could offer. To the world, Lily was just a quiet librarian. But beneath her calm exterior lay a dangerous secret, one that had been carefully hidden for years. A secret that, if exposed, could ruin everything she had worked for. She'd been careful, too careful, and yet, fate had a way of throwing the unexpected into her neatly organized life. It all started on a rainy Thursday afternoon when a man walked into her library. His name was Jake Hamilton, and he was a CEO of a well-known tech company in the city. Tall, well-dressed, with an air of confidence that made him stand out in the small, quiet town. He wasn't a regular visitor, but there he was, asking for a book on ancient history. It seemed innocent enough, a simple request that would have been forgotten in the course of her day. But something about Jake, his piercing blue eyes, the way he carried himself, struck her. She couldn't place it, but she felt an inexplicable pull towards him. She handed him the book, her hands slightly trembling. He noticed, of course. Jake was sharp, observant, and he wasn't used to being ignored or brushed off. He smiled at her, the kind of smile that could make anyone feel both seen and exposed at the same time. He made a small joke about how libraries were the last quiet place left in the city, and they shared a brief laugh. That was the beginning of everything. At first, it was just small interactions. Jake would visit the library every week, always asking for a new book, always staying to chat for a few minutes. He seemed to enjoy her company, and Lily couldn't help but feel drawn to him. It was easy to ignore the growing tension in the back of her mind, the nagging feeling that something was going to give, that this quiet connection between them could turn into something much more dangerous. Lily had been running from her past for so long, and the last thing she needed was for someone like Jake to discover her secret. But the more she got to know him, the more difficult it became to keep her distance. Jake was persistent, and he was beginning to piece together something Lily couldn't ignore. His obsession with finding the truth had started innocently enough. He had asked her a few questions about books she was reading, about her opinions on certain subjects. But that quickly turned into questions about her life, her interests, and, eventually, her past. Lily knew she was in trouble. She could feel it in the air whenever he walked into the library. His presence was like a magnet pulling her in, making it impossible to stay hidden. She had always been good at keeping her distance, but Jake was different. As he got closer, her secret started to feel less and less like a secret. It was only a matter of time before it all unraveled, and Lily had no idea how much longer she could keep up the facade before everything came crashing down around her. As the weeks passed, Lily couldn't help but feel the weight of Jake's presence growing heavier. Every time he walked into the library, she felt the subtle tension in the air. She had tried to stay distant, keeping the conversations light and avoiding any deep discussions about her past. But Jake was persistent, and his questions became more pointed. He asked about her childhood, her dreams, and even her favorite books, things that no one had ever really asked her before. It was as though he was trying to piece together something that Lily had desperately wanted to keep hidden. One afternoon, as she was shelving a new stack of books in the quiet corner of the library, Jake walked in. This time, he wasn't just asking for a book. He was there with a determined look in his eyes, as though he had made up his mind about something. He approached the desk, his usual confident smile replaced with a more serious expression. "Lily, I need to ask you something," he said, his voice low. "I've been thinking about you or about us. And I know you're hiding something. You don't have to tell me right now, but I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere." I want to know you, really know you. Lily's heart skipped a beat. The words hit her harder than she expected. She had always known that this moment would come, that the more they got to know each other, the harder it would be to keep her secret. But hearing it out loud, from Jake, was something she wasn't prepared for. She tried to keep her composure, forcing a smile. Jake, she stopped herself. What could she say? How could she explain that she wasn't just a simple librarian, that her past was full of danger and deceit? She had built this life, this identity, so far removed from who she used to be. I don't know what you're talking about, she said softly, hoping her voice wouldn't betray her. Jake's gaze softened, but he wasn't convinced. He stepped closer, lowering his voice further. I know there's more to you, Lily. You don't have to be afraid of me. Whatever it is, we can face it together. The sincerity in his eyes was both comforting and terrifying. Lily felt the familiar urge to retreat, to run and hide before it was too late. But something inside her, something she hadn't felt in years, urged her to stay. Could she really trust him? Could she open up about the past that had haunted her for so long? As she opened her mouth to respond, the library's front door opened with a soft chime. The moment was broken. Jake's attention shifted, and Lily felt a rush of relief, even though she knew it was only temporary. She watched as Jake greeted the newcomer, a business associate he seemed to know well. Lily used the distraction to slip away, retreating to the back of the library to catch her breath. She leaned against the shelves, closing her eyes for a moment. Why was she so afraid? Why was she so scared to let someone in? She had spent so many years building walls around herself, convincing herself that she didn't need anyone. But Jake? Jake was different. He saw through her defenses in a way no one ever had. Later that night, as Lily sat in her small apartment, the weight of the conversation hung over her. She couldn't stop thinking about Jake's words. He wasn't like the others. He wasn't just after something, he wanted to know her, the real her. She couldn't deny that a part of her longed to be seen, to be understood. But the other part of her, the part that had survived so much darkness, warned her to stay away. Trust was dangerous. Jake might say he was different, but could she really take that risk? The next day, as Lily prepared for her shift at the library, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Jake. I'm thinking of you, Lily. Let's grab coffee tomorrow. No pressure. Just talk. No secrets. The message left her heart racing. She stared at it for a long time, her fingers hovering over the screen. Should she go? Should she trust him? After a few moments of hesitation, she typed a reply, okay. Tomorrow. Coffee. As soon as she hit send, a wave of nervous excitement washed over her. She had agreed to meet him. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't sure what was going to happen next. The next day, Lily found herself sitting nervously at a small corner table in the coffee shop, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup, her eyes glancing at the door every few seconds. She had agreed to meet Jake, but now that the moment was here, she wasn't sure what to expect. The world outside the window was bustling with activity, but inside, the soft hum of the coffee shop felt like the calm before the storm. She had no idea how this meeting would go, but she could feel the weight of the decision she had just made. She had agreed to let Jake in, even just a little, and that was terrifying. Lily wasn't used to letting anyone see beyond the walls she had built. Her past was dark, and the secrets she kept buried ran deep. Could she really tell him the truth? Could she trust him with the things she had hidden for so long? Her heart raced as the door opened, and she looked up to see Jake. Walking toward her, his smile warm, his eyes sincere. He was dressed casually, more relaxed than she had seen him before, and for a moment, she almost forgot the weight of the secret she carried. Hey, Jake said as he slid into the seat across from her, I'm glad you agreed to meet. I know it's a big step. His voice was soft, understanding. Lily smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, she replied, her voice a little shakier than she intended. I wasn't sure, but here I am. They both laughed, the tension in the air easing just a little. Jake leaned forward, his gaze steady. "I'm not trying to pressure you, Lily," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "But I want to understand you, all of you. I know there's more to you than you let on, and I want to be there for you, if you'll let me." His words hung in the air, and Lily felt a wave of emotion rise within her. She had always been so careful, so guarded, and yet here he was, offering her something she didn't even know she needed, acceptance. For a moment, she felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. What if telling him the truth was a mistake? What if he couldn't handle it, or worse, what if he used it against her? Jake seemed to sense her hesitation. He sat back in his chair, giving her space, but his eyes never left hers. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready for," he said quietly. "But just know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. No matter what." Lily's heart fluttered, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a small glimmer of trust. But that trust was fragile, like glass, and she wasn't sure she was ready to shatter it by revealing her deepest secrets. They spent the next few hours talking about everything and nothing at all, books, life, their dreams for the future, but the deeper conversation she knew was coming never materialized. It was as if they were dancing around it, both of them acutely aware of the unspoken truth hanging between them. As the afternoon turned into evening, Lily stood up, her heart heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. "I should get going," she said, her voice quiet. Jake stood with her, his hand brushing hers as they walked toward the door. "I'll walk you to your car," he said. Lily nodded, too lost in thought to protest. As they stepped outside into the cool air, the silence between them was comfortable, but it wasn't the kind of silence that filled her with peace. It was the silence of something left unresolved. When they reached her car, Jake turned to her, his expression serious. "Lily," he said, his voice low, "whatever you're hiding, I promise it won't change how I feel about you." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She hadn't expected him to say that. She had expected more questions, more probing. But Jake, it seemed, was willing to wait, to give her the time she needed. That simple gesture of patience made her want to believe in him, to trust him more than she had trusted anyone in years. She wanted to tell him everything, to finally be free of the secret that had held her captive for so long. But she wasn't sure she was ready for that. Not yet. "Thank you, Jake," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She opened the door to her car, but before she could get in, Jake stepped forward and took her hand. "I'll be here when you're ready," he said, his eyes searching hers. For a moment, Lily stood frozen, feeling the pull of something she had never allowed herself to feel before, hope. And maybe, just maybe, it was enough to take the next step. With a final squeeze of his hand, Lily got into her car, but as she drove away, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The beginning of something that could change everything. Ivy days passed, and Lily found herself consumed by the conversation with Jake. Every time she closed her eyes, she could still see his warm smile and feel the sincerity in his words. It was hard to ignore, especially after years of living in the shadows, hiding from the world and keeping her past buried. For the first time, someone had shown interest in her, not as a quiet librarian or someone with secrets, but as Lily, the real her. But the weight of her past still hung over her, a constant reminder of what she had done, of the mistakes she couldn't undo. As much as she wanted to open up to Jake, to trust him the way he seemed to trust her, she couldn't shake the fear that if he knew the truth, he would leave. The next week, Jake's visits to the library continued. He came in almost every day, sometimes for books, sometimes just to chat. Each time, he seemed more at ease around her, and Lily found herself looking forward to their brief moments together. But the tension between them, unspoken, fragile, never seemed to fade. He would smile, say something casual, and then, when he thought she wasn't looking, his eyes would linger just a little too long, as if waiting for something more. It was only a matter of time before one of them broke the silence. Lily tried to ignore the growing connection between them, but it was impossible. She found herself thinking about him when she should have been focusing on her work. She even caught herself imagining what it would be like if she could tell him everything, the truth, the whole story. But could she really? Was she ready to risk it all? It was late one evening when the truth finally came crashing down. Lily was alone in the library, finishing up her shift. The lights were dim, the only sound the soft rustling of pages and the occasional hum of the air conditioning. She was sorting through some returned books when she heard the sound of the door opening. At first, she didn't look up, assuming it was just a late patron, but then she heard footsteps, slow and deliberate. She turned around, her heart skipped a beat when she saw Jake standing there, his hands stuffed in his pockets, his expression serious. "Lily," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight she hadn't heard before. "We need to talk." His words sent a shiver down her spine. She knew exactly what this was. The moment had come. She had put it off for so long, but now, here he was, standing in front of her, ready to confront whatever it was she had been hiding. "Jake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not ready." "I can't," she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Jake stepped forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "I know you're scared," he said, his voice gentle, almost reassuring. "But you don't have to do this alone. Whatever it is, we can face it together." His words were a lifeline, but Lily was still paralyzed by fear. She had spent so many years running from her past, keeping it locked away. She wasn't sure she could ever truly escape it. "You don't understand," she whispered, her hands trembling as she held onto the edge of the desk. "You don't know who I really am." "What I've done," Jake reached out, placing his hand over hers, his touch warm and steady. "I don't care about your past, Lily. I care about you. And I'm not going anywhere, no matter what." His words were so simple, yet they felt like a promise. A promise that for the first time in her life, someone was willing to accept her, flaws and all. Lily closed her eyes, tears stinging at the corners of her eyes. She had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed. And yet, somehow, in that moment, she didn't want to run. She wanted to stay, to let him in. Slowly, she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. When she opened her eyes again, Jake was still standing there, waiting. She could feel the weight of his gaze, but there was no judgment in it, only patience. I'm scared, Jake," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I've spent so many years keeping this part of me hidden. I don't know how to let it go." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to let it go all at once. We can take it one step at a time. I'm here for you, Lily." For a moment, everything else faded away. It was just the two of them, standing in the quiet library, their hands touching. And in that moment, Lily realized that maybe, just maybe, she could start to trust him. She could start to let someone in, to stop running from her past. With a deep breath, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll tell you. But I need you to promise me something." Jake looked at her with a mix of curiosity and tenderness. "Anything. Promise me you won't judge me," she said, her voice barely audible. "No matter what I tell you, promise me you won't turn away." Jake nodded without hesitation. "I promise, Lily. I'm not going anywhere." With those words, Lily finally felt the walls she had built around herself begin to crumble. It wasn't going to be easy, but maybe, just maybe, she could let him in. Ivy night, the library was quiet, as always, with the soft hum of the fluorescent lights and the smell of old books filling the air. Lily stood by the shelves, her hands gripping the spine of a book, her mind elsewhere. She had promised Jake she would tell him her secret, but now that the moment was upon her, she wasn't sure if she was ready. The weight of her past, her dangerous, hidden life, pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy cloak, and she wasn't sure if she could bear the burden of it any longer. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked up the book, trying to steady her nerves. She had spent so many years running from her past, hiding from the truth, and now Jake was asking her to let it all out. Could she trust him enough to reveal everything? The promise she made to him echoed in her mind, "I won't judge you, Lily. No matter what." He had said those words with such sincerity, with such warmth, but fear still gripped her heart. What if, after hearing her story, he couldn't look at her the same way again? What if he turned away, just like so many others had before him? She had seen it happen time and time again, people getting too close, then pulling away when they learned what she had been through. But Jake was different. He had proved that with his patience, with his willingness to wait. He hadn't pushed her, hadn't asked her for more than she was ready to give. He had let her come to him in her own time. And now, it was time to make good on that promise. Taking a deep breath, Lily walked toward the small desk by the window, where Jake had been waiting for her the last time they spoke. He was there now, just as he had said he would be, sitting with a cup of coffee in front of him, looking at her with those patient, understanding eyes. "Lily," he said, his voice soft but steady. "You don't have to do this unless you're ready." His words were like a lifeline, pulling her out of the storm of her own thoughts. "I'm ready," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but the words felt like a weight lifting off her chest. Jake stood up as she approached, his eyes never leaving hers. He stepped closer, his presence warm and reassuring. "Whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here," he said gently, reaching for her hand. The simple gesture was all it took to crack open the walls Lily had so carefully built around herself. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "I've been running from my past for a long time," she began, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I did things I'm not proud of. Things I wish I could take back. But I can't. And it's been haunting me ever since." Jake listened in silence, his thumb gently brushing over her hand in quiet support. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She had never allowed herself to cry over what had happened. It was a part of her life she had buried deep down, hoping it would stay buried forever. "I was involved in some bad things," she continued, her voice cracking slightly. "I was part of a criminal organization. I never wanted to be, but I didn't know how to get out. I thought I could escape, but it followed me, no matter how far I ran. I changed my name, moved to this town, and tried to start over, but it's always been there, just under the surface." She paused, feeling the weight of her words. It was the first time she had said them aloud to anyone. "I hurt people, Jake. I hurt people, and I can never undo that. I've spent every day since then trying to make up for it, but I don't know if I ever can." Jake remained silent, his hand still holding hers. He didn't say anything at first, but Lily could see the understanding in his eyes. He wasn't pulling away, wasn't judging her. He was there, present, accepting her in that moment. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said after a long pause, his voice firm but kind. "Whatever happened, whatever you've been through, it doesn't define you. What matters is who you are now, who you're choosing to be. And that's the person I care about." Lily stared at him, her breath catching in her throat. She had expected anger, rejection, maybe even fear, but instead, she was met with compassion. For the first time in a long time, she felt a spark of hope, a small flicker of light in the darkness. She had never let anyone in like this before, and yet, here she was, sharing the darkest parts of herself with someone she barely knew. And Jake was still there, still holding her hand, still standing by her. "You don't have to make up for the past," Jake continued, his voice soft but certain. "We can't change what's already happened, but we can choose what we do moving forward. And I want to be part of that. I want to help you, Lily. To make this a fresh start." Lily felt a tear slip down her cheek, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from the relief that came with finally being understood, finally being accepted. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't so afraid of it. She squeezed Jake's hand, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Jake smiled back, his eyes soft with affection. "I'm not going anywhere," he said simply. And for the first time in her life, Lily believed him. Ivy days passed, and for the first time in a long while, Lily felt like she could breathe. Jake had been true to his word, he was patient, understanding, and he didn't pressure her for more than she was ready to give. Every day, she felt herself growing a little stronger, a little more confident in her decision to open up to him. It wasn't easy, there were still moments when she wanted to pull back, to retreat into the safe silence of her own life, but Jake made it easier to take those small steps forward. Their connection had deepened in the weeks that followed their conversation, and though they hadn't yet discussed everything, there was a trust building between them that made Lily believe she might actually have a chance at a new life. The days were filled with quiet moments, like the ones they spent walking through the park, talking about books or life's little things, and yet the weight of the unspoken truth still loomed over her. She knew that the time would come when she would have to face the past fully, but for now, she was savoring the peace of simply being with Jake. One afternoon, as they sat together at a cafe, the atmosphere light and easy, Jake broke the silence. "Lily, I've been thinking about something," he said, his voice thoughtful, a small frown playing on his lips. She looked at him, her heart skipping a beat. "What is it?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Jake hesitated, his gaze meeting hers with a mix of concern and care. "I know we haven't talked about everything yet, but I can't help but wonder, what's going to happen when your past catches up with you? I don't want to put pressure on you, but I know there's more to your story, and I can't help but worry about what happens next." Lily felt a pang in her chest. She had known this moment would come, the moment when Jake would want to address the past more directly. She had been putting it off, hoping it would stay buried, but it was clear now that she couldn't avoid it any longer. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. "Jake, she stopped, her mind racing for the right words. "I've been running for so long, trying to escape it. But it's always there, in the back of my mind, waiting to come back. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'll ever be truly free from it." Her voice was barely a whisper, but the weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Jake's expression softened, and he reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "You're not alone, Lily," he said, his voice steady, full of conviction. "Whatever happens, I'm with you. We'll face it together. You don't have to carry it all on your own." For a moment, Lily felt a surge of emotion. It was like a weight had been lifted, if only for an instant. She wasn't used to being this vulnerable, to allowing herself to believe that someone else might actually want to help her bear the burden. But Jake's words were a balm to her bruised heart, and she found herself leaning into the comfort they provided. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Jake smiled, his eyes warm with affection. "You'll never have to find out," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." As they sat together, the conversation turned to lighter things, but in the back of her mind, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. She wasn't sure what it would look like, or when it would happen, but she knew that eventually, she would have to face the full extent of her past. For now, though, she allowed herself to hold on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, Jake was the person who would help her move beyond it. But that hope was fragile, and Lily couldn't help but wonder if it was all too good to be true. Days passed, and as she and Jake grew closer, Lily couldn't ignore the gnawing fear in the pit of her stomach. Her past was still out there, waiting for the moment when it would come crashing back into her life. She had seen it happen to others, how one mistake could undo everything, how the weight of one's actions could be impossible to outrun. But even with that fear lingering, she found herself more and more willing to believe in a future with Jake, a future where she didn't have to hide anymore. As she lay in bed that night, her thoughts racing, she realized that maybe the hardest part of moving forward wasn't the fear of facing the past, it was learning to trust in the future. And for the first time in a long time, she was ready to take that leap. Ivy days went by, and despite the growing bond between them, the shadow of Lily's past never seemed to fully disappear. Every time she and Jake spent time together, whether it was walking through the park, enjoying coffee, or sharing quiet moments at the library, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just around the corner, waiting to surface. It was a fear she had carried with her for years, the fear of her past catching up with her. And lately, it felt like it was closing in. One evening, as the two of them sat in the cozy corner of their favorite cafe, Jake's usual relaxed demeanor was replaced with a serious expression. Lily noticed it immediately, the subtle shift in his energy. He took a deep breath before speaking, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of concern and determination. "Lily, I've been thinking a lot about what you said," he began, his voice low. "And I've come to a conclusion. I don't know what's going to happen with your past, but I want to be there for you when it does. I know you're scared, and I know you think you can handle it on your own, but you don't have to. You don't have to face it by yourself." His words hit her like a wave. The simple offer of support, of standing by her side, meant more than she could express. But in the back of her mind, a voice whispered, "What if it's too much? What if this all falls apart when the truth comes out?" She had spent so many years building walls, hiding from the things she had done, convinced that if she just stayed quiet long enough, it would all disappear. But now, with Jake's unwavering support, she was beginning to realize that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't about running anymore. Maybe it was about facing it, confronting the truth, and finding a way forward, together. But the thought of fully opening up still terrified her. "Jake, you don't know what you're asking," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You don't know what it would mean for you to be involved in all of this. The danger, the mess, everything that's followed me here." Jake leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers, his voice firm. "I'm asking because I want to help. Because I care about you, Lily. And I'm not going anywhere. I don't care what's in your past. It doesn't change how I feel about you." His words were both comforting and unsettling. Lily had never had anyone in her life who cared enough to offer this kind of support, someone who was willing to risk everything for her. The weight of his sincerity felt like a burden and a gift all at once. She felt the tears welling in her eyes but quickly blinked them away. "You shouldn't," she said, her voice shaking. "You shouldn't care about me. Not after everything. I'm not worth it." Jake shook his head, a gentle but firm gesture. "Lily, you are worth it. You always have been. Your past doesn't define you. It's what you do now, today, that matters. And if you're willing to face it, I'll be right there beside you." His words sunk in, like a seed taking root in the soil of her heart. She had spent so much time believing that her past was a chain that would always drag her down, that she could never escape it, that she wasn't worthy of love or redemption. But Jake's belief in her was a lifeline, pulling her out of the darkness she had lived in for so long. As much as she wanted to deny it, to tell herself that she wasn't ready, she knew deep down that she couldn't keep hiding forever. Jake was right. It was time to face the truth. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Okay, I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything." Jake's expression softened, and he reached across the table to take her hand in his. "Whenever you're ready, Lily. I'm here." His words were simple, but they carried a weight of comfort and promise that Lily hadn't known she needed. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel completely alone. She felt like there was a way forward, even if it was unclear, even if the path ahead was uncertain. She didn't have to carry the burden of her past on her own anymore. For the first time in so long, she allowed herself to believe in something better, something more. And with Jake by her side, maybe, just maybe, she could finally begin to heal. Ivy Day arrived, and Lily found herself sitting across from Jake at their usual cafe, the weight of the decision she had made still pressing on her chest. She had promised him that she would tell him everything, but as she sat there, the words seemed to stick in her throat, unwilling to be spoken. Jake noticed her hesitation, his eyes soft with understanding. He had never pushed her, never tried to force her into revealing anything she wasn't ready to share, but Lily knew this was it. This was the moment when everything would either fall apart or take a turn toward something new. "Lily, you don't have to do this if you're not ready," Jake said, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm not going anywhere, but if you need more time." Lily shook her head, her heart racing. "No," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to do this. I need to tell you, because I can't keep running anymore. You deserve the truth, and you deserve to know who I really am." Jake squeezed her hand, offering her a small but encouraging smile. "Whenever you're ready," he said softly. With a deep breath, Lily closed her eyes for a moment, gathering the courage to face the truth. She had spent so many years hiding, lying to herself and to others, thinking that if she could bury her past deep enough, it would never come back to haunt her. But now, with Jake sitting there, waiting patiently, she knew that it was time to face the consequences of her past, and to start moving forward, no matter how scary it seemed. "I wasn't always who I am now," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Before I came here, I was involved in things that I'm not proud of. Things that could have ruined me, ruined everything around me." She paused, struggling to find the words to explain without revealing too much, but Jake's steady presence calmed her. He was right there, listening, not judging. "I got involved with people I shouldn't have," she continued, her gaze dropping to the table. "People who didn't care about anything except their own gain. I thought I could handle it, that I could just go along with it and keep my distance. But eventually, things got out of hand. People got hurt. I hurt people. I couldn't walk away from it, and that's when I knew I had to get out before it completely destroyed me." Jake's expression never wavered, his eyes locked onto hers as if telling her that no matter what she said, it wouldn't change his feelings for her. Lily's voice broke as she continued, the flood of emotion she had kept bottled up for so long threatening to spill over. "I left everything behind. I changed my name, moved here, and tried to disappear. I wanted to leave it all behind. I wanted to be someone new. But the truth is, no matter how far I run, it's still a part of me. And I'm scared that one day, it will come back and everything will fall apart. That you'll see me for who I really am and leave, just like everyone else has." Jake remained silent for a moment, taking in everything she had said. He didn't rush to fill the space with words, didn't offer empty reassurances. He simply sat there, allowing her to speak, allowing her to let the truth come out in her own time. Finally, he reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands, lifting her eyes to meet his. "Lily," he said, his voice soft but full of conviction, "your past doesn't define you. What matters is who you are right now, who you choose to be today. I know it's not easy, but you don't have to carry it alone. You've carried that weight for long enough, and I'm here to help you carry it." For the first time in a long time, Lily felt a small, but powerful shift inside her. She had spent so many years believing that her past would always be a part of her, that it would always hold her back. But Jake's words, his acceptance, made her realize that maybe she didn't have to let it control her. Maybe she could take a step forward, with him by her side, and build a future without being haunted by what had happened before. "But I'm still scared," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if I can ever truly escape it." Jake leaned in, his forehead resting gently against hers. "You don't have to escape it, Lily," he said quietly. "You just have to let it go. And you don't have to do it all at once. We'll take it one step at a time, together." A tear slipped down Lily's cheek, but this time, it wasn't one of fear or regret, it was one of relief. She had finally shared her truth, and while it hadn't erased the past, it had begun to break the chains that had held her captive for so long. With Jake's steady presence, his unwavering belief in her, she realized that maybe she didn't have to carry her burdens alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, she could start to build a future where her past didn't define her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me." Jake smiled, his eyes soft with affection. "I always will, Lily," he said simply. "I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in a long time, Lily believed him. Ivy weeks went by, and with each passing day, Lily felt the walls around her heart start to come down. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when doubt crept in, whispering that she wasn't worthy of the peace she was slowly starting to find. But Jake's unwavering support, his constant belief in her, made it easier to face each new day, to take one more step toward the future she never thought possible. The past, while never truly gone, no longer held her captive. She had begun to let go, to accept that it was a part of her, but it didn't have to define her. One evening, as they sat together in the park, the cool breeze ruffling the leaves around them, Jake turned to Lily, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice casual but with a hint of something more. We've come a long way, haven't we? Lily looked at him, her heart swelling with affection. Yeah, she replied, a soft smile tugging at her lips. We have. They sat in companionable silence for a few moments, the sound of the wind in the trees filling the air. It was peaceful, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. Something had changed. The weight that had once been on her shoulders was no longer there, and she felt freer than she ever had. You know, Jake continued, breaking the silence, I've always believed in second chances. But what we have, Lily, is something more. It's not just a second chance at love or life, it's a second chance at being whole again. You've shown me what it means to truly trust someone, and I don't take that lightly. Lily felt her heart skip a beat. She had never expected to hear those words, especially from someone like Jake. He had always been so steady, so certain, while she had been full of uncertainty, but now, they were both standing on the same ground. Jake, she started, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know how to thank you. For everything. For believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself. Jake reached for her hand, his grip warm and reassuring. You don't need to thank me, Lily. You've already given me more than I could ever ask for. He paused, looking into her eyes, his gaze deep and full of sincerity. But I want to ask you something. Lily's breath caught in her throat as she looked at him, the world around them seeming to fade into the background. What is it? She whispered. Her heart racing. Jake smiled, his eyes sparkling. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Lily. Will you marry me? For a moment, everything stood still. The question hung in the air, and Lily felt a rush of emotions flood over her, surprise, joy, disbelief. She had never imagined that this was where her life would lead, that she would find someone who loved her so completely, who accepted her past and embraced her for who she was. And yet, here she was, standing on the brink of something she never thought possible. Yes, she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Yes, I will. The words were simple, but they held so much meaning. She had said yes to him, to their future, to a life that was no longer defined by the mistakes of the past. She had chosen hope, chosen love, and for the first time in years, she felt truly free. Jake's face lit up with the most radiant smile, and he pulled her into a gentle embrace, holding her close as though he never wanted to let go. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, the world around them fading away as they shared a moment of pure happiness. It wasn't just the promise of marriage that made Lily feel complete, it was the promise of a future with someone who saw her for who she truly was, flaws, mistakes, and all, and still chose to love her. They weren't perfect, and they both knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy. But as long as they had each other, Lily knew that they could face anything together. As they pulled away from the embrace, Jake took her hand in his thumb gently brushing over her knuckles. You've changed my life, Lily, he said softly. And I promise, I will spend every day showing you how much you mean to me. Lily smiled, her heart full, and for the first time in a long time, she truly believed that everything would be okay. With Jake by her side, the future no longer seemed so daunting. They had both found something they hadn't expected, love, forgiveness, and the strength to move forward, no matter what. And as they walked away from the park, hand in hand, Lily realized that the real journey was just beginning. A journey not defined by the past, but by the hope and love they would build together.